And welcome back to the GCSunscast. It's the round 21 episode. I'm your host Shane, and joining me is Tom. Thanks for coming back, Tom.
G'day Shane, how are you this week?
Yes, good. It's a bit dusty after the weekend. Only turned 32, but I easily had 32 beers.
Get a few Suns fans shouting you some?
No, I stayed pretty quiet at the Suns game. Too many Richmond supporters for my liking, so I just sort of hid in the corner, tried not to get into any fights. But it was good. It was good to see so many Richmond fans there. What we had 18,102, I believe, which is the biggest crowd for the Gold Coast out of all sporting codes this season, besides the Commonwealth Games, obviously.
That's true, but still, it's a great crowd. Look, Richmond fans are usually pretty good fans to get along with because they sympathise. You know, they've spent a lot of years at the bottom and they're starved of success and whatever. One premiership and the worms turned. They're the worst. They're the worst.
Look, I don't know if it's just me or whether it's a trend that most Suns fans are experiencing, but I'm not really too bothered these days. We're getting flogged by, last week was 80-odd points, this week 74 points. And I'm not walking away from the games as disgusted as I was mid-season against Carlton and GWS and Geelong, sorry. I think expectations plays a part in that. I'm not expecting the Suns to win. We have a horrendous injury list, and especially when you come up against some of the top sides. Sydney just seems to be like a fluke now. It was only 3 weeks ago. And yeah, Richmond were just too good on the day. They kicked 19 goals, 11, 125. And Gold Coast had 7 goals, 951. So, I mean, Jack Rewalt single-handedly killed us with his 10 goals.
Yeah, look, he kicked more goals than we did. For one player,
yeah,
and a better score than the Suns didn't even have a multiple goal kicker.
Yes, I mean, and that we've been going on all season about that, how the Suns going to kick a winning score, and it's been evident right throughout the season. In the first few games, when we were all excited about the Suns in the trial games, and the game against North, and the game against Carlton, it was sort of covered over because the relentless pressure and attack to keep the ball inside our forward 50 just kept giving us opportunities to score and score and score, and it didn't really matter who kicked those goals because they were going to get kicked. But since then, the sides really dropped away from that, and maybe other sides have worked us out a bit better. But our coaches, they're not making enough moves to sort of counteract that.
No, that's true.
Either that or our players just aren't good enough. But they were good enough at the start of the season, so I think it's more down to a lack of personnel with injuries. But I think coaches also play a part in this, and we're going to see a few of our coaches leave at the end of this year. It's just there's not too many good things to look for in the Suns game. There were a couple of highlights in this game, so let's jump back into looking at the game. I mean, Bose played a blinder of a game. He had 10 marks and was just all over the place, used the ball quite well, I thought.
Yes, absolutely. And what was great to see about that is he's one of the guys we've been waiting for him to come on. He's had a funny season. He started off really, really well, then got suspended after 2 games, and after that he was sort of dropping off, and then he got an injury, and now he's come back from the injury, and he was a bit rusty. And I think there were a few players who come back who were a bit rusty, like him and Bose, and Fiorini was another one who had quite a good game. And,
he kept Cochin pretty quiet. I think only had 12 touches, Cochin, and I think Fiorini had about 26 himself, didn't he?
That's right, and that I mean that's the sign of a good tagger is not the player who gets 6 touches and they go, oh well, he was a tagger, so he only got 6 touches and the other guy gets 20. It's the guy who can really just take a player out of the game. but in doing so, get the ball off him and bloody take it away. So, Fiorini can do the same thing as Miller. We've now got 2 or 3 high quality taggers. You can look at taking on a team like Geelong, which we're going to have to do the week after this. So, a couple of highlights there, I think. But you watch a game like this, and you see how Richmond can just do the little things right and really hammer you on the scoreboard with it.
Yeah, the only other highlights that stood out was Calamachi's mark. I mean, that's been nominated as for the mark of the round and possibly mark of the year. So I urge all Suns fans, if they haven't, to jump on the AFL website and vote for our boy Calamachi for mark of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it won't win mark of the year. It might not even win mark of the round because Heaney had a pretty good one for Sydney. But the main thing is that Cal's in the forward line for starters, and going up and taking marks like that, it'll do a hell of a lot for his confidence.
Lockie Weller kicked another beautiful goal from outside 50.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be good if he could do a couple of them every game and we're a chance?
Yeah, he's definitely got the power to hit the scoreboard. So if we can get the ball in his hands going forward, he's a real damaging option. Looking at the disposal efficiency, a couple of things caught my eye. The highest disposal efficiency player was Leslie. However, he only had 4 disposals. He actually had quite a poor game, I thought. Besides the goal he kicked at the start, he didn't really do too much after that. And I think they shuffled him around a bit to sort of mark on Jack Rivalry at one stage, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought they really messed him and a couple of other guys around a lot. As you mentioned earlier, when a move is made by the coaches, it seems to be too little, too late, and so they made the decision from the beginning to have Leslie as a full forward. Well, just forget about it. He's not a full forward. He never has been. They should have had him down there on Rewald, and Rewald might have had 6 goals with Leslie on him, but he wouldn't have had 10. So, I felt sorry for Leslie because he was just moved around from pillar to post, and he's better than that. It wasn't his fault. Mind you, you can't say he had a good game, just that when he did manage to get his hands on the ball, he did something good with it.
You're I wouldn't say unbiased, you're a mad Stephen May fan. Now, there's a lot of talk Stephen May had an off game, had a poor night. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, even at the best of times, I still support him. I just think he's so passionate, and he's just watching the defensive structures get completely torn to shreds. Some people say he's having tantrums and being a sook, but your captain's got to be able to sort of say, hey, look, you fucked that up, and in practice we don't do it that way, and that we don't man up, but we have zone defence. So at some point, someone's got to be on that guy, and then it's not my job to be here trying to spoil this guy when he's out on a 10-metre lead, which was every time you saw May trying to chase Rewald out to spoil the mark. It was. Sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't. People were hard on Jesse Joyce because it looked like he was marked up on Rewald. Why would you put Jesse Joyce on Jack Rewald? It just didn't make sense. When Colin Jasny was on him, he got towelled up. Their body language was all terrible, and I think Maisie was just fed up with a lot of it. And they've shifted Maisie forward a couple of times in the last few games, and I just feel like they've just got to send him up there, because you can't, as a captain, you can't be thinking, but it's my back line. It's his whole team.
No, and it's coming across now. As I said last week, I reckon that a lot of the Suns players, they're done for the year. They just want the season to be over. I mean, us Suns fans are certainly starting to feel that way. Young only had 11 disposals and 36.4% disposal efficiency. By far the worst in the side. So he's not playing the role that he was at the start of the year.
Well, he's not being made to be accountable. There have been times when we've been screaming for him to be dropped, and sometimes he comes back and has a blinder. But he's just been given him and Holman especially have been given the freedom to fail, and more often than not, they've carried out the job, and sometimes they've exceeded expectations. But they've had several poor games each, and Young, it doesn't take much for him to suddenly look like a bit of a B grader, does it?
No, but I think what's really starting to come to the top now is the experience of Riscatelli. He had 14 disposals, and besides Leslie's 100% for 4 disposals, he had 92.9% for his 14. So he was
basically one.
He was a real pillar for us in defence in this game. He had 5 rebound 50s. He was up there just getting the job done, trying to get the ball out of the defence. So I think his experience might be starting to pay off, while the younger kids sort of tire and sort of get distracted with their holiday plans. But let's move on to the Neefle game. That was much better. GWS beat Gold Coast 20 goals 9-129 to the Gold Coast 9-5-59. So that was a 70-point loss. There was a couple of highlights here. Schoenfeld had 41 disposals and 8 clearances, so he's definitely pushing for selection. And Brad Shear had 28. Brad Shear had 28 disposals, 10 tackles, and 2 goals.
Everyone wants Barlow and Scrimshaw to come into the team. They didn't even play on the weekend in either comp. But going by this game, Schoenfeld, although he's copped a lot of criticism in the past and he hasn't played all that many senior games, he's quite clearly taking a few strides forward. And he's doing, with no Barlow or Scrimshaw in the team, he led the possessions, and he was the one who was, keeping the team in it the entire time without sort of probably 4 or 5 players who are regulars in the Neefle. The Suns just weren't able, without a ruckman, without even Connor Butterick, the young, bloody 16-year-old. He was off playing for Queensland under 17s. There are players who have been regularly, performing for the Neefle team and getting the wins in the mid-season, which we needed. But now there were 5 AFL listed players in this team, with Barlow a late withdrawal for family reasons and Scrimshaw the non-playing emergency. So, what do you do? The Giants, they did well. We've beaten the Giants twice at the Neefle this year, and we should have beaten. This was a game we should have won. There were 2 fellows who were playing for the Giants Neefle team. One of them was actually a Sydney Uni player, and the Sydney Uni had the bye. So that's not fair for a start. They just drafted in a player. And another guy's a recent AFL player. I forget the name right now. It doesn't actually matter. They drafted in 2 players. We didn't. It wasn't 70-point difference, but certainly they were doing everything they could within and without of the rules. The reason I mention it, though, we all know we had the great one and only Eddie Sainsbury come in and play for us, and he was a delight to watch because he's got the dad bod now. He's not AFL fit, and he and all us dads were giggling watching him running around, and every now and then he just face plant, and it was great. What's to stop Matt Rosa getting a Neefle development role with the Suns on a modest salary and running around in the Neefle for 22 games next year? Like if the Giants are doing it, I'm pretty sure the Swans are doing it. I'm pretty sure the Lions would be doing it if they thought they could. Maybe Andrew Swallow can come and have a bit of some sort of consultancy role and run around in the Neefle for that season. Not being eligible for the AFL, of course, because they're not on the list. I think we should be pushing in that direction, actually, because 5 AFL listed players in a team that should be pushing for finals, and now will probably miss finals. Well, that's no good for our young guys that we're trying to develop. It's no good for our academy guys that we're trying to get extra games against grown men. You know, we've already had the schedule in the NEFL this year has been compromised so that all the NEFL teams have to play each other multiple times, and all of the non-AFL affiliated NEFL teams play each other quite a lot. So the ladder at the moment, Sydney look pretty safe. The Lions are in the top 6 on percentage. The Giants are a 7th on percentage, are equal with Brisbane, and then the Suns are a 1 win behind and quite a lot of percentage behind. So the Suns basically have to beat the Lions and then the Swans, and I imagine then have to hope that the Lions get beaten by the Giants, and then the Giants get beaten by the Swans. So that's one of those stupid conundrums where the Suns are very, very unlikely to be playing finals.
Thanks, Tom. And that was Tom with the NEFL news. Moving over to the injury news, Hanley, Brodie and Lonergan have been ruled out for the season. So Hanley, Brodie both suffered hamstring injuries in the AFL game, and they've all been confirmed today that they're out for the season. Lonergan, it looks like he's still having knee issues and they're not going to rush him back in. So it sounds like they're putting him in cotton wool and he'll probably be wrapped up for the season as well, which makes you start to question some of these tests that we've got coming back on the injury list. We've got Thompson, Lemons, Nichols and McPherson listed as tests. Do you think any of these guys come back in and play in the last 2 games? Or do you think the club's just going to wrap them up in cotton wool and say, well, that's it. Maybe you'll get limited minutes in the NEFL, but we're going to get you to focus on coming back for pre-season day 1.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, well, for a start, I don't think Nichols would have a position in the top 22. So he's back training. He's all reports he's doing everything in training, and this test status is he's told people that he's going to play. The NEFL team doesn't have a ruckman. They got flogged by 50 hit-outs on the weekend, so he would be a welcome addition and probably a really good role model for the young guys to run around with a ruckman who's going to go up against at least half the contest and is pretty good at ground level and has other attributes to his game that could be could lead to a quite dominant NEFL performance.
I think Thompson's a good chance of coming in this week on purely the fact that he's only been out for 2 weeks and the Suns sort of need the harder body in the side.
I agree that he's the cotton wool type, but I disagree that I don't think you would disagree either. I disagree that with putting him in cotton wool for the whole season. He's got to come back. He's a confidence player. Our backline needs him. If we're going to have any options to be able to throw Maisie forward, we need Thompson in the team. There were a lot of defenders who, without Thompson there to anchor things, the defense just didn't look right. Even though Richmond are a good team. What I was going to say about McPherson is he's also telling people around the traps that he's ready to come back, and I would think that he will play 2 NEFL games, and that'll be that. It'd be nice if he came into the AFL team, but I just don't think that there's any real there's no real rush.
That's interesting with McPherson because he did have a leg break or a leg injury, so you got to question his ability to keep his fitness up running with an injury like that. I can much easier see Lemons playing than McPherson. But again, I guess this is less injury news now and more selection committee news.
Yeah, true.
I don't see how we can beat Brisbane this week. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to be another fluke type scenario. And for that to happen, I guess the club really just has to throw all the magnets at the board and see what ends up where, you know. Give Stephen May a full game in the forward line and bring Thompson back to play in defence. Throw players around a bit. Yeah, throw players around a bit. Sort of try them in different positions. Try different... the coaching staff, like with Stuart Dew, he needs to maybe experiment with a different style of game plan as well. Because there's nothing left for this season for the club. And the players are getting really... Yeah, you can just see that their lack of intensity and their lack of motivation has sort of been slipping away. So reinvigorating them by letting them play a more attacking, more fun sort of style of football, maybe that will encourage them to get up and get excited about football again, ready for the next pre-season, you know, because there's just nothing more I think they can learn playing the way they are this year.
No, I totally agree with you that there's a lot we could say about it. It comes down to this, Shane. It's a first-year coach, and the only coach that he brought with him was George Stone, who's sort of like a coach, you know, mentor type fellow. Look, there needs to be a clean out. There's been some great loyal servants of the club, yada, yada, yada. We had our clean out last year with getting Eid out of there and a few other in the admin side. This year is the second half of that clean out. There'll be new people come in, and there'll be people who Dew works with very well. The other thing I'll say about that is Stuart Dew is the really new cutting edge style of coach. He's gone through that level 4 coaching qualification, which deals with a lot of the non-football side of coaching. And I think he's got a lot of that right. I just don't think it's translating into performances. And we can see that. It's really obvious. But that doesn't mean it won't in the future. The test is here. Can he be like Luke Beveridge and achieve, you know, turn things around quite quickly and achieve success with a young group? Well, the answer to that is you know, we don't know. It's got another year or two before we can find that answer out. Certainly, Brendan Bolton is another of this new generation of coaches who really hasn't achieved a lot of success, but like us, they celebrate the successes where they beat Essendon, they beat us. You know, they think it's the best thing in the world, and maybe Bolton's not going to get the sack. You know, how do you feel that Dew's gone as far as that you know, it's not all on him, but eventually it is all on him kind of thing?
Yeah, look, it's really hard to say. I haven't seen too much in the last half of the year that tells me Dew's a good coach. I was buoyed and impressed with the early season performances by the club, the game style they were trying to play, and just the mood that was coming out of the club, the excitement around it. But that seems like it's the honeymoon period, and that's over now. I'll reserve my judgment for probably halfway through next year. Give Dew the time he needs to have his assistants and the playing group that he wants in there, and with the majority of the boys having a year under their belt trying to play his game style. We've got the Q Clash coming up this week. So it's always sort of interested me how this is viewed by the wider public, especially Brisbane fans. Do they see it as a true rivalry? Like, coming from supporting Adelaide and experiencing the showdown at least twice a year, there was a huge hate between those two teams, and it was highlighted recently as well. I don't think there's a huge hate between Gold Coast and Brisbane fans, but there is definitely that dislike between them. What do you think?
Always has been. Yeah, I've lived on both sides of the divide. I was born on the Gold Coast. I went to school in Brisbane in the first sort of 4 or 5 years of a primary school. Then we're back down to the Gold Coast, and all the kids there call me a Brizzo, and I was like, but I was born in Southport Hospital. Nah, you're a Brizzo. And a pale skin and all this kind of stuff. And then, within a few years, I had my suntan and my blonde hair and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved back to Brisbane, and they all called me a surfy from the Gold Coast who always wears, bare feet and boardies everywhere. It is a pretty big cultural divide between the two. When on the weekend, when the surfers from Brisbane will drive down, and the locals will be very hostile. So it's always been there. But we've never really had a sporting rivalry between the two cities.
So what about the moments that's happened in the previous 15 Q clashes that are contributing to this rivalry growing? For mine, the very first Q clash, for one, where Gold Coast won the unexpected with the help of a marvellous 5 goals from Nathan Cracker and a fantastic Specky on the wing, and Jared Brennan winning the Marcus Ashcroft medal. So
yeah, well, a couple of Lions traitors coming across. I mean, for me, I had been a Lions supporter, Bears supporter, then a Lions supporter, and then threw my lot in with the Suns. But that game, for me, was me realising, okay, there's a bit of letting go here, because I'm pretty excited for my new team, but that's my old team. And then in the game, I realised I had to choose one or the other. I couldn't be a fence sitter. I couldn't be a two-team guy, which I think a lot of people were like me, but I think they remained two-team people until a few Q clashes went along. I mean, I guess we can put it out there for listeners and put it out there for people to sort of share their experiences. It's fairly common to be an ex-Lions supporter. So I think the Q clash is important for those individuals, because there was that conflict, and now it's kind of like, nah, I hate them. I want to see us beat them every time we play, even if it means going down on the draft, even if it means leapfrogging them on the ladder and losing a couple of draft spots. I want to see Stephen May knock someone out. I don't really, but I want to see him win the Ashcroft medal. You know what I mean? It's got more importance. I think for Suns fans, it's got a lot more importance. I think for Lions fans, they have a few rivalries already. But yeah, Lions and Suns, it's a long way down the list on AFL rivalries, but I think it's probably got an arrow up.
Yeah, it's definitely growing. The Stephen May incident a few years back certainly annoyed a lot of Lions fans. There hasn't been too much coming back the other way, though, has there, as far as Lions players disrespecting Gold Coast? The most recent...
Hang on. Hold the phone. This year.
Yeah, I was going to say, the most recent example was Dane Zorko's poor sportsmanship towards...
and then they made him captain.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. I just thought, who does that? Like, I can't remember the last time someone refused to shake hands. So it probably happens all the time.
I'm sure Tuke Miller and several of the other Suns players will get into Zorko over the weekend, and we might see a couple of spot fires pop up. But with the crackdown on punching in the AFL, I don't think it's going to be too big. But yeah, I mean, Brisbane's winning the ledger at the moment, 9-6. So we've got a bit of a way to catch up still. My opinion is, I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think we're going to win. I think we're hit with too many injuries, and it's really more about just throwing the magnets around, experimenting. So when I go to the game, I'm not really going to be there expecting a win. If we win, that's fantastic. If it's a close game, fantastic. Otherwise, I'm just really looking for the improvement in our young kids, seeing something special from Bowes or Ainsworth or Fiorini. All right, so who do you think's going to play this weekend then, Tom? We've got Barlow who didn't play. We've got Scrimshaw who didn't play reserves last week. And we've got, it looks like Brodie and Hanley are definitely going to be out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would say that Barlow and Scrimshaw are pretty good replacements for Brodie and Hanley, given their relative positions. However, given that they didn't play, that's kind of bad luck, isn't it? So who replaces Brodie? Maybe Brad Shear. Who replaces Hanley? Maybe Max Spencer. Or it could, I don't think Lemons comes back in. That's the thing. And I guess another way to look at it is that Thompson comes in to replace Hanley, and the dynamic of the backline changes. But I just thought it was worth recapping that, because it seems like it's going to be a weaker team than last week, but perhaps by shuffling things around, it doesn't have to be a weaker team. It could actually be stronger.
Well, whether it's a win or a loss for the Suns, make sure you get to the ground and support them. We are actually going to be doing a meet and greet prior to the game. So any GCSunscast fans that want to catch up and meet myself or Tom, we are going to be at the Lifesaver Tower at the front of the stadium from 6 p.m. to probably around 7 p.m. If anyone wants to catch up with us, we'll be there. Have a chat with us, talk about the Suns, let us know what you think of the podcast. It would just be great to meet some of our community.
Yeah, I'll be wearing number 17. It looks like the drought will continue. There will be no rain, so it will be 25 and beautiful. I guess by then maybe down to around 20 degrees. It's slightly windy. A good night for watching the footy. I hope there's a bumper crowd. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot to cheer for Lions or Suns fans. But the dismal crowd that was at the Gabba between the Suns and the Lions was, it wasn't that good. And then of course the Demons and the Suns at the Gabba had a rubbish crowd. You hope the Brizzos will bloody come down and enjoy a weekend at the Gold Coast. I'm one of those Brizzos.
Well, that does it for another episode. Thanks for listening, Suns fans, and go the Suns. Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the GCSunscast. If you like what you hear, please get involved in our small community over on bigfooty.com on the Gold Coast board. Chat with myself, Sunners, and Tom, 17er, as well as dozens of other Gold Coast fans. You can reach me on Facebook or Twitter at 32bitshane, or email me 32bitshane@gmail.com with any queries. Leave a comment or review on iTunes and SoundCloud, or a donation on Patreon. Just search GCSunscast. Donations are in US dollars and will go towards reliable tech and hosting the podcast, so listeners have access to our earlier episodes. Thanks again. Go Suns!